Okay.
Okay. So what are we going to call the show? It's your charter, man. They're slipping a fast one by you.
Charter bus.
This doesn't, yeah, charter bust.
Charter bust, I love it. Okay, let's go.
Okay, fine. All right. I'm going to start here.
Okay.
Okay, is that better?
I have to turn that back on when you...
No, I'm fine.
This is Charter Bust.
I'm Sara Levison.
I'm Paul Tiger.
And this is Both Sides of Center. So today we have a rather timely show. The City Council has decided, with the largesse of the city attorney, to put a couple of items on the ballot. Remember we talked about referendum and referred measures?
Yes.
These are a couple of referred measures. And there are...
And they're going to change the...
City charter.
Right. Or not.
Or not. It depends. So actually there are three referred...
I say don't vote for them.
I say
don't do
not.
It. Don't do it.
Yes. Can we spell N-O-T? Vote no. N-O.
Okay.
The three measures they've referred to the ballot. The first one is a charter amendment for modernizations of conduct.
Don't call it the first one.
Modernization of conduct of city business. I'm not making this stuff up. Shall the City of Longmont Home Rule Charter be amended by revising sections blah, 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 and blah, blah of the charter to remove outdated language and allow for modernization of the conduct of city business?
So
read the full text by clicking here. So I'm reading directly from the city's website. Right. Second item is a charter amendment as well. City of Longmont Charter Amendment for elected officials to prospectively vacate office. This sounds like a fairy tale, Paul, doesn't it? Shall the City of Longmont Charter be amended by revising Section 2.8 to give elected city officials running for another elected office the option of prospectively vacating their current office to avoid the burden. Whose burden and expense of a subsequent election? Or I don't think they meant subsequent. They meant a special election. And then again, you have to click to read the text. And the third issue is City of Longmont issuing revenue bonds for funding resilient St. Vrain improvement projects. Okay, so we're just going to talk about the charter busting.
You can vote for the water bond if you like.
Well, you got to read the stuff. So I mean, you know, you got to read the stuff because we're bonding, we're going into debt, and right now interest rates are high, even for municipal governments with good credit rating. So I've read that stuff, and I am going to close this so you and I could, you know, get to fisticuffs here.
That's no technology in between us.
No. So why is it, what's in this first charter amendment to do modernization?
Well,
what did you read out of it?
I don't know. I was looking for wording changes, but they're talking about modernization of business. Do you know, we've talked about...
Well, they also did these modernizations where they made the word councilman, council person.
Right.
So they're doing gender-neutral language. However, I'll point out that while it's modernizing that, those are the only sections that they're modernizing, and the rest of the charter refers to people as councilmen. I mean, there's a lot that's left open here to be desired.
This is remember we were having a discussion about the word street.
Yes.
And so this is a few episodes back where we were dealing with contributions to campaigns and where people are supposed to give the street address of where they live. But they didn't. They just put an address. And so they could replace it with email address or URL, anything.
Whatever's your fancy on the day you're putting down your report.
So this is a modernization that I would look forward to, is say, let's modernize the code to bring it forward into the 21st century. But that's not really what they're doing here. Unless
they're basically, I've had a long-standing argument from the first month I was elected with the city attorneys, both of them, you know, Clay Douglas and Eugene May, especially Mr. May, and I wanted to rewrite the entire charter.
Oh, yes,
and we talked about how outdated our charter was, and the whole supposition of this ballot initiative.
When was the charter created?
1961.
There you go.
And I think we're one of the few, if not maybe the last city, not town or village in Colorado, never to do a wholesale rewrite of their charter.
And lots of towns around us have.
Oh, Littleton, Boulder's done it a couple of times.
We
in
have to
fact,
remember,
Boulder's charter says every 10 years they have to look at it.
People don't realize this, but Longmont is one of the oldest towns in Colorado.
Yes, it is.
Okay, and so we still. You have to, when you're driving your horse and buggy when you're driving a car on Main Street, you have to have a red lantern so not as to interfere with the horse traffic.
Yeah. So the first ballot amendment really says things like, you know, we're going to use the word council person, not councilman, and it's also going to update the mayor being able to have authorization to sign non-contract documents. And there's a lot of these little changes that they're making, frankly, that because they haven't done a wholesale look at the charter, they're just picking and choosing.
Right.
In fact, the city attorney basically is picking and choosing, and frankly, the city attorney, in my opinion, cannot rewrite our charter. If these minor changes are important, let's take a whole look at it.
There may, in fact, be a leadership issue.
Like Eugene May, our city attorney.
No, where Eugene is a leader and the council is not. And the council says, oh, we don't want to deal with that. Just go do that, and we'll sign it later.
Right. They have to put it on the ballot, and no doubt they're all going to get lined up to say and create a campaign, even though they can't campaign for it.
They're going to endorse their own work, which, by the way, they can't endorse anything. But they will.
Well, the other part of what I am having a problem with, this first ballot issue to be in modernization, is actually a realization that the way our charter is written, you have the election on Tuesday, and then the next Monday, the first Monday following the election, you're sworn in.
Right, and you have a gap.
And you have a gap of 5 days.
During which no one's in office?
Well, no, people are in office until. So this actually revises the charter to say that council members will be sworn in. There'll be an organizational meeting the first Tuesday in December following the regular city election. I have a bit of a problem with that, because in no way does any of this language, when they talk about election, say the person who is elected would be elected because the vote was certified.
Right, okay.
So in no way, and to me, the standard that should be in the charter, and I think Mr. May and I will have a rigorous discussion in the public forum, is that the certification of an election is the primary adjudicator of who actually won.
Right. And so I could say, oh, well, I concede. And then we find out later on that I won.
Or you concede on election night or the next morning, and it's too close to count. One of the things that's always been a failure, and it's a bomb waiting to happen in our city government, is that with a certain number of people leaving office due to term limitations, and maybe somebody leaving because they don't want to seek re-election, if there were 3 seats that were contested and went to recount, and a couple other seats were term limited, you would be effectively without a government.
I think that you're grasping.
Why am I grasping?
Well, so it's the other thing that happened with with the Santos election, which is the same as now. All right, so they want to create a law
this is the second ballot
right.
charter amendment.
Right.
Yeah,
based on things that had happened twice in 10 years.
Twice in the history, pretty much.
Twice in
the entire history.
In the history,
yeah.
all right. And they happen within 10 years of each other. And so now they want to make a charter change.
All
right?
up in arms about something, yeah.
Right. And so this is the other thing is that the possibility that this might happen, oh my gosh, we should absolutely run and create law for it now.
Well, not law. It's not an ordinance. Yeah. It's actually our city charter, which is basically a constitutional amendment to our founding document in the city. Yeah. So, and most of it came about, frankly, my opinion, the failure of city government to prepare. They knew there was a 2/3 possibility that someone would be elected from a current council seat as mayor. There were 3 candidates.
Right.
And so don't assume, like they did, that the county would coordinate elections on a period of time where they're redrawing precinct lines and they're way too busy.
And by the way, this is that they thought that, their charter says that this is when they'll have an election.
Right.
Great. So they then go to the county clerk and says, we need this election. And the county clerk says, we're in the middle of redistricting.
We can't do it.
We don't have time to do this.
And possibly, I believe that the city council and the city attorney have violated the charter because the charter specifically says that if there is a special election, you have to call a date. They called the date, and when they found out that they could not fulfill that date, they simply changed it.
Right.
I mean, same thing, like street address. Because the charter is silent on, we could just change the date. Everything's fine. No, the charter is the charter.
So, what happens when you break the law? What happens when you break the charter?
You go to Judge Frick. You go to the municipal judge to file something, and there's never been a challenge. No, there actually has been a challenge to the charter in Boulder that I read up on, but not, I believe, in Longmont. The other thing about, well, let's talk about this ballot issue we're talking about, vacating your seat.
Right.
So, again, we had 2 of 3 candidates who were running from council seats that they weren't term limited out of, and under the second change to the charter, you would be able to prospectively, I shouldn't do quotes.
No, prospectively. You resign.
You would resign.
It's not perspective. Once it's done, it's done.
Right. You would declare, I'm running for mayor.
Yeah.
And you would have the opportunity. See, it's not actually mandating that someone resign.
No.
They're given the opportunity.
Which they've always had.
What they've always had. Great point, Paul. So they've always had that opportunity.
So they're going to have a charter
special
change to give me permission for something that I could always have done.
Right. And if you wanted to be a responsible candidate, then they say, well, we don't want to cause the cost of a special election. And
let me explain what I could always have done. At any time, a council person can resign.
True.
They are free to do as they please. There's nothing that binds them, chains and, tied to this job. Nothing can happen to them. They can't be prosecuted because they quit.
Right. And the other unintended circumstance of this is that, say you have 2 or 3 candidates, like we had when Doug Brown, who was term limited, right. Karen Banker, and Roger Lang all ran for mayor.
3 members of council who all ran for mayor.
Only one of them was term limited, so he was going out.
Right.
So if he
the 2 would have resigned, and then you would have had a council of 5 people.
And on election day, you would have been still, possibly, if you had runoffs or you had too close to call, you would have again been without a government, effectively. And so I think that
they give more opportunity to diminish the size of government.
To do damage.
I like that. We're going to reduce the size of government. Everybody quits.
That's right. That's right. Well, but I think that I had a little bit of exposure to this philosophy, if you will, but with a different twist. When I became acquainted with the political dynamics in Cape Canaveral, Florida, recently, there were a couple of council members who were running for mayor. Their charter requires them to resign. Absolutely. You declare for mayor, you tender your resignation of your council seat at that moment, and you're required to do that. It's not prospectively.
How soon do they have a special election to fill your seat?
Your seat is filled. If your seat is empty, your seat goes on the ballot for that same election you're running for mayor.
Okay.
And there, they have totally avoided special election, and it changes the dynamic of council members vying for the mayor's seat. They all have to work together, and then there's not this, I know we're all adults in life, right? And then there's animosity about
people who are
bitter, who are the losing side of a mayoral race, and they're forced to sit on council with the person who defeated them.
This is occurring right now.
Yeah, it's occurring right now, and it's frankly it's bad showmanship. But in the circumstance that one candidate decides to be magnanimous and says, "I'm going to resign because I don't want to force a special election if I win," people will say, "How arrogant are you?" And then their compadre on council, they decide not to, and you still then will have a special election.
In the proposed change, it talks about the cost. Okay, so this isn't cost that we experience, it's the cost that the city experiences. So they're asking council people who are already council people to consider that cost. So when I got here 25 years ago, 20 years ago, the cost of a special election, citywide election, was 40 grand. It's now $400,000. It's probably past that since I'm speaking about it.
Or the city clerk learns how to run an election. God forbid that we end up with a county government or a county clerk who doesn't have the capacity, or say there's a major failure in the machines they use. You know, there are a lot of conspiracy theories out there, but say, for example, that their machines are totally decertified for one reason or another, that they can't be used.
Barcodes on the ballot. Let's decertify those machines.
Maybe they're buying all new machines, and the city coordinated election would be a guinea pig. So we want to be able to have an ability to keep our elections in-house. And because city council, the city manager failed to find a vendor, fully well known in September of last year,
that we would have a special election in February.
Yes. So to me, that second ballot issue is a firm no, because again, it's a solution looking for a problem that happened twice in 151 years.
Yeah. Oh well, it happened more frequently in the last 10 years.
Right, right. But again, it would. It's not going to save the city any money unless people are. I mean, the better thing would be to say we're going to mandate, if you're running from an unexpired council seat, that you resign in order to run for mayor.
I like that idea that they completely resign, that they don't come back. We do have members who have run for the mayoral seat, and they don't win, and they're back serving on council, and it's bad blood.
It creates a lot of animosity. So when you look at the cohesiveness of what you want to see in your government officials, people have to swallow really hard and have a fake smile to continue the first 6 months to a year of the new mayor's term in that way.
What an interesting thing here is that how we differ is that our mayor is elected, where in a lot of other councils, the council elects their own mayor from their own body.
Well, Boulder had, but I think Boulder now is changing that.
Boulder fixed that. But what Boulder has always wanted and has been on the ballot many times, that Longmont has, is a ward system.
Yes.
And so people are not accountable to a particular area. They're all at large.
And I'm not advocating, I mean, again,
all can be shot from the same cannon.
Right, and everybody could live in the same block.
Yes.
At that point, you know. So I'm not, I mean, I'm strongly no on both these things, because I think that they're piecemeal. And again, it's really the city attorney, under the direction of the council, being given the freedom to pick and choose what he wants.
They have not, they're not leading.
And they're not engaging. I mean, any change to the charter needs to have a citizen commission, like we did when we helped advise council to rewrite the campaign finance ordinance.
Right.
And in fact, the charter, I think, is a higher level of citizen participation.
Definitely. This is about citizens who own the city. We own the city, and that's what the charter is about. It's not staff it out. And unfortunately, it's been staffed out. Many things have been. I ask people at council to spend more time and read the charter. It's actually not very long. The charter is not that long.
Boulder's charter is a lot longer. So I didn't get through all Boulder's charter, but I think once a year, maybe we need to read the charter out loud. It'll take us a while, Paul. But, well, let's bring in some well-known.
It sounds like
actors.
Passover.
Well, let's bring Scott Roche in, some other people from Longmont Theater Company, and see if we could read the charter and have it on record so people understand what's in it.
It's an interesting idea because lots of people, school kids, I carry around a copy of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. That, by the way, is what Liberty has in her left hand. It's not something here in our city. Who has read the charter? That
would be a good next show.
Okay.
Man in the street.
I'm going on vacation.
Have you read the charter, sir?
And I will read the charter.
Read the charter.
Okay.
I'm Sara Levison.
I'm Paul Tiger.
And this is Both Sides of Center. Just vote no on those charter amendments.
No. What's this thing?
I'm going to just read the thing, and then we're going to shut it.
Okay.
Okay?
Right.
And be less
just
distracted.
shut it.
I'll shut it down, man.